The heat was so intense, it felt like a physical blow. I could feel the roar of the fire in my chest, and the sickening, sweet smell of smoke mixed with burning green stalks filled the air. My entire corn patch, my prize-winning, towering, 8-foot-tall corn harvest was a raging inferno, a funeral pyre of my months of hard work. I stood there, frozen, watching all my effort, all my hopes for the farmer's market, turn to ash. That's when I saw her. Brenda. She was standing on her back deck, bathed in the orange glow of the flames, clutching a garden hose like a trophy. A manic, triumphant smirk plastered across her face. And as I lunged toward the gate, toward the inferno, I didn't see a neighbor. I saw an arsonist, completely unhinged. I barely registered the sirens screaming down the road, closer, closer, and that's when everything went wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. What would you do if this happened to you? And subscribe to HOA Files. My name is Jake, and I'm not exactly your typical suburban homeowner. I bought a house in Willow Creek Preserve because it promised quiet space and a generous half-acre lot. See, I'm a chef by trade, but my real passion, my soul food's growing my own produce. I spend my weekends in the dirt, not on the golf course. My dream, the whole reason I bought the property, was to cultivate a massive, beautiful garden, especially corn. Not just any cornerloom varieties, sweet as sugar. Perfect for the gourmet market. I had meticulously planned and planted the biggest, most gorgeous stand of corn you've ever seen. By Mitogast, the stalks were towering, easily 8 feet tall, a fortress of green gold. They were ready for harvest. It was a sight of pure rural beauty, right in the middle of a very sterile, very beige suburban development, and that, my friends, is where Brenda comes in. Brenda lived directly behind me. Across the short strip of common yard that separated our fences, she was the self-appointed HOA president, and let me tell you, the title was less a civic duty and more a royal decree in her mind. She was the kind of person who wore sensible orthopedic sandals and believed the entire universe revolved around the proper shade of beige siding and the height of her lawn. The first sign of trouble was about a month after the corn started taking off. I was out watering one evening, feeling that satisfying gardener's ache in my back, when I heard the dreaded voice, "Mr. Miller," a word. I turned to see Brenda standing at our property line, peering through the slats of the fence like a disgruntled prison guard. "It's Jake, Brenda." "What's up?" I tried to be friendly. I really did this thing, she said, gesturing vaguely at my magnificent wall of corn. "It's entirely out of compliance." I frowned. Compliance. It's a garden. It's on my property. A declaration of covenants. Conditions and restrictions, she recited. Sounding like a lawyer who'd majored in pettiness, Article 4, Section B, Subsection 7, no planting, shrubbery, or construction shall impede the line of sight for adjacent property owners or exceed an elevation of 4 feet at maturity. Unless it is a pre-approved ornamental tree, I couldn't help but laugh. "Brenda, this is corn. It grows high. That's what it does. Are you telling me I can't grow food on my own property?" "I'm telling you," she spat, her voice rising in pitch, "that it looks like a farm. In Willow Creek Preserve is a planned residential community, not a farmstead. It's tacky. It reduces my property value. And I can't see the sunset." She can't see the sunset. That was it. My beautiful, life-giving corn was blocking her view of the orange suburban sky. The audacity of this woman. I shook my head. "I'll look into the covenants, but I guarantee you they cannot stop me from growing corn." "Good evening, Brenda." Turned away, the sound of her sputtering protests echoing behind me. 2 days later, the first official HOA violation notice arrived. Agricultural use of residential property. Attached was a photo of my corn patch. Taken from her second-story window, looking dramatically huge. I wrote a polite but firm email back, citing agricultural exemption laws and local ordinances that protected food production on residential lots. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not. The incidents escalated quickly. First, she started spraying her own lawn with a hose, aiming a fine mist right over the fence and onto my plants. It was barely enough water to matter, but it was constant. I installed a taller privacy screen just to block her visibility. That brought on the second violation, unauthorized fence extension. I tore it down immediately, knowing I couldn't win a paper war of frivolous fines. My stress levels were through the roof. I just wanted to grow my vegetables in peace. Then came the petty sabotage. I found that my irrigation line had been severed a clean, deliberate cut right near the fence line. It wasn't an animal. I rerouted the line, buried it deep, and installed a tiny motion-activated security camera pointed directly at the fence. I had a feeling I was going to need evidence. The corn was now at its peak. Fat ears. Perfect tassels. I was planning the harvest for the upcoming Saturday. I'd worked 18 weeks for this. I had orders. This was not just a hobby. It was a small part of my livelihood. The day before the planned harvest, I got the ultimate final warning. I stepped out of my kitchen to grab a glass of water, and there, taped to my back door, was a bright pink notice. It wasn't an HOA notice this time. It was a cease and desist order from a law firm, threatening a lawsuit for nuisance and diminution of property value if I did not immediately remove the objectionable crop. It was signed, of course, by Brenda A. Jenkins, President, Willow Creek Preserve HOA. My hands were shaking as I read it. She hadn't just used the HOA. She'd hired a lawyer. She was serious. This was a whole new level of crazy. She was trying to bankrupt me into compliance. I felt a wave of crushing despair. The legal fees alone would destroy the profits from my entire harvest. She was winning. She was actually going to stop me. I thought, I'll deal with the lawyers after the harvest. I have the law on my side. I just need to get the corn out first. I would harvest everything, sell it, and then fight the legal battle with cash in hand. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. I'd be done before the sun was high. That night, I went to bed with a terrible, uneasy feeling in my stomach. I even checked the garden one last time, walking around the perimeter with a flashlight. The corn looked majestic, silent under the moonlight, waiting. I had no idea that the silent peace was merely the calm before the storm. I just didn't realize how far a truly desperate, entitled person would go when they felt like they were losing control. I had forgotten the cardinal rule of dealing with a truly dedicated Karen. They don't stop at threats. They go straight to destruction. I was startled awake at 3:17 a.m., not by my alarm, but by a crackling sound. A loud, spitting, hungry sound, followed by the terrifying, unmistakable smell of smoke. I leaped out of bed and ran to the back window. What I saw instantly killed the air in my lungs. My beautiful corn patch, my fortress of green, was engulfed. A terrifying wall of fire, the flames licking hungrily at the dry stalks. Sending thick black smoke swirling into the night sky, my mind went completely blank for a moment. Then pure primal rage took over Arson. She did it. She actually did it. I didn't even bother with a shirt. I threw on a pair of jeans and ran for the back door. That's when I saw her. I flung the door open and ran down the steps toward the inferno. And there she was, Brenda. She was standing on her deck, bathed in the sickly orange light of the fire, holding her garden hose, which was now, thankfully, useless against the blaze. She was watching my life's work burn to the ground, a look of twisted satisfaction on her face. She looked unhinged, completely mad. Brenda, what have you done, you crazy woman? I screamed, my voice raw with fury and shock. She flinched, startled that I was out. Then she regained her composure, straightening up. I merely took care of a hazard, Mr. Miller, she yelled over the roar of the fire. Dry, illegally high agricultural waste. I was forced to mitigate the danger. It was a clear and present fire hazard to my property. I completely lost it. I vaulted over the little half fence that separated us, ignoring the searing heat. You torched my harvest. You destroyed my livelihood. I was screaming now, pointing an accusing finger at her. I called the fire department after I initiated mitigation, she declared. Puffing out her chest, trying to maintain her air of righteous authority even as she stood a few feet from a raging fire she'd started. You should thank me for my quick thinking. You were going to let this eyesore burn the entire community down. I was shaking with adrenaline and white-hot fury. I reached for my phone, my fingers flying. I didn't call the police, not yet. I called the fire department back. I'm the owner of the property at 1284 Willow Creek. The fire is spreading. But listen to me. The fire was intentionally set by the neighbor at 1286, Brenda Jenkins. She's standing on her property right now. She admitted it. I have a recording. She must be stopped. I turned my security camera's internal mic on the one it's set up for the irrigation line, and pointed my phone in her direction, recording her face. Say that again, Brenda? Say you started the fire. She seemed to realize the danger of the moment. Her triumphant expression melted into one of panicked denial. I didn't. I said I was mitigating. You started it. You did it for the insurance money. I'm the victim here, she shrieked, suddenly turning the drama up to 11, but it was too late. The sirens were now deafeningly close. Then, the first fire truck, a massive, gleaming red engine, slammed to a halt right in front of my house. The firefighters were a whirlwind of action, dragging hoses, yelling commands. I immediately pointed them toward the main blaze, but then I turned, feeling that cold vindication flood my system. I walked toward the lead firefighter, Captain, whose face was already grim from the smoke. Captain, I said, trying to steady my voice, the fire is intentionally set. The woman who started it is right there, on the deck of 1286. She just admitted it to me. The captain's eyes, already narrowed from the smoke, snapped to Brenda's deck. She was trying to slink back inside, clearly hoping to become invisible, ma'am. The captain barked, his voice carrying authority that was utterly foreign to Brenda's petty HOA world. Do not move. We need to speak to you. Brenda froze on her deck. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights. The shock on her face was perfect. She had expected to be the hero. The vigilant neighborhood president who saved the community from my illegal farm. She had not expected to be addressed by a fire captain as a suspect, as two of the crews started dousing the corn. The captain and two police officers, who had arrived almost simultaneously, walked directly up to her front door. I followed them to the property line. I saw Brenda emerge from her house, completely transformed. She wasn't just panicked anymore. She was furious that her authority was being challenged. This is an outrage. She screeched at the captain, hands on her hips. You need to be dealing with his fire, not harassing a law-abiding homeowner. I am the president of the HOA. He is in violation of Article 4, Section B, Subsection 7. The captain, a man who clearly dealt with real-world crises, looked utterly bewildered by her sudden, misplaced legal rant. Ma'am, we have a report that you admitted to intentionally starting this fire. I admitted to mitigating a hazard, she yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. He is the problem. He has a farm in Willow Creek Preserve. This is an eyesore, and it blocks my view. The police officers were now fully engaged. One of them pulled out a notebook. Ma'am, mitigation and arson are two very different things. Did you use an accelerant? I just used a little lighter fluid to dry out the dead stalks, she announced proudly, as if that exonerated her, completely unaware she had just confessed to using an accelerant. They needed to be removed. I was being a good citizen. That's when the second officer walked over to her side yard and picked up a bright red, empty plastic canister. Ma'am, is this your lighter fluid canister? Brenda's face went from indignant rage to horrified realization. Her shoulders slumped. The captain just shook his head, looking disgusted. I stood there, watching the scene unfold. The smell of smoke was receding, replaced by the smell of wet, scorched earth. My corn was gone, a blackened, smoldering mess. The loss was real. The rage was still there. But a new feeling had taken over, absolute cold, hard vindication. The police officers didn't waste any time. Brenda's frantic protests about property value and aesthetic compliance were utterly useless against the reality of felony arson. They put her in handcuffs right there on her porch. Her face was a portrait of pure, unadulterated shock. She kept screaming about the covenants, about her constitutional rights, about the ugliness of my corn. It was pathetic, but also deeply satisfying. I watched as they led the HOA president, the self-proclaimed Queen of Willow Creek, to the patrol car. As she was being loaded into the back seat, she looked at me one last time, her eyes blazing with a final, desperate hatred. The fire was out. The police had taken their statements. The fire captain, before he left, walked over to me. "Mr. Miller," he said, shaking my hand, "I'm sorry about your garden, but good on you for having that camera. She's going to be facing some serious charges." He paused, then gave me a knowing look. And for the record, that was some beautiful corn. The emotional resolution came the next morning. I stood in the yard, looking at the devastation. It was heartbreaking. Months of labor, gone. The financial loss was significant, but the community had rallied around me. My other neighbors, the ones who were too scared to confront Brenda, came by with coffee, with offers to help clean up. Genuine sorrow for my loss. They even started a GoFundMe for my lost crops and legal fees. Turns out, my corn wasn't tacky at all. It was a symbol of resistance against the HOA tyranny. The moral lesson was clear. Don't let petty tyrants destroy your passion, and always install a camera. You can fight the HOA, but you have to be ready to fight the fire too. Brenda never returned to Willow Creek. She resigned from the HOA by certified mail from a holding cell. The new HOA president? A nice elderly gentleman who just wants the community to be peaceful? I'm already planning next year's garden. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be taller. And this time, I'm planting it with a full security system. Not just for the corn, but for the new 2-story gazebo the nice old gentleman next door just installed. Which, you guessed it, now slightly blocks my view of the east sky.